Chris, we just came from your main operation, and I think we traveled about 7 miles here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what we've got in this particular orchard?
Okay, well, this particular variety that we're looking at right now is called John Boy. It's a new variety for us, and we plant different varieties to give us different ripening dates through the course of the season. So we'll start the season about mid-June with a cling peach called Garnet Beauty. And we go through the season through subsequent varieties, Red Haven, Jim Dandy, John Boy, Loring, Crest Haven, and so forth, to extend our season as long as possible so that it extends our retail opportunities at the same time. One of the biggest challenges with harvesting fruit, like a peach, is that not all of the peaches on the tree ripen at the same time. So we go through these trees every 3 days and harvest as they ripen. So this is probably the third picking on this particular field right now, and we're getting a fair amount of fruit, but as you can see, there's still green fruit in here. So we're going to have to come back yet another time to finish picking this particular tree. We usually pick our peaches about 5 times, so it's over a course of 15 days, every 3 days, 5 pickings, 15 days to harvest all the peaches from one tree.
Now I noticed that there, to me at least, to the untrained eye, there's not a whole lot of difference between the 2 peaches you just picked. But there obviously was to you. What are you looking for when it's ripe?
Well, when a peach is completely ripe, and this one may not even be completely ripe here, but you're not going to have this greenish color in the background. It's going to be completely yellow and fully mature. And I'll see if I can find one here. Got to look around a little bit. So you can see there's a little difference here. The background on this one is fully yellow, while this one's still a little green. And this is a more mature piece of fruit. This one's ready to pick. It's still firm, so it's going to handle through the transportation out of the field and packing it and distributing it to the grocery stores. But it's going to have all the sugar it needs to taste really good.
How much ripening does it do once it's been picked?
What's interesting about a peach is once it's harvested, it will produce no more sugar. So all of the sugar is generated while it's hanging on the tree. And that is one of the distinct advantages we have as a local grower, because the riper you pick this fruit, the worse it's going to handle through a distribution system. So it's harder to take a ripe peach from California and ship it all the way into the Midwest and have it arrive in any type of good condition. We can pick riper fruit, so it's got more sugar in it, and our distribution is not so widespread, so we can deliver a better tasting fruit to the consumer and create a good market advantage for ourselves.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the trees themselves. What strikes me here immediately is they're just not that tall, but I assume there's a reason for that.
Well, these trees are young, so this is a youthful orchard, and it will continue to get quite a bit bigger. We like to have our trees about 10 to 12 feet tall. Typically, when a tree is fully mature, they're going to have to use ladders to harvest the fruit. They like these orchards because they don't have to carry, our crew doesn't have to carry ladders through here to harvest the peaches, so they're a lot faster and they're not as tired at the end of the day. But you don't get quite the production that you really need off of an acre of this size of tree compared to a fully grown tree.
Well, let's talk about production. What would you expect to get off of one mature tree, and then let's talk about how much you get from an acre.
We like to think in terms of numbers of fruits per tree. One of the old sayings about peach growing is you're going to get the same bushels of peaches off of an acre whether they're 1 inch in diameter or 3 inches in diameter. You're just going to have more peaches that are really small. Peaches, by their nature, overproduce. We only need about 10% of the actual blooms to create a full crop. So we spend almost as much money reducing the fruit from the tree as we do harvesting the fruit from the tree. We target about 250 to 350 peaches per tree. And if we get that, we're going to generate about 2.5 to 3.5 bushels per tree. So,
when you say reduced the fruit on the tree, how are you doing that?
Thinning peaches is an art, not a science a lot of times. We will go through every block 3 times. We go through the first time during bloom. You're going to do the most bang for your buck early in the season. So we really try to aggressively thin the crop while it's still blooming, taking off as much as 50% of the blooms on the tree. And we do that with toilet bowl brushes. So we come through here with our guys, and they have toilet bowl brushes in their hands, and they're just brushing flowers off the tree like crazy. And we do a lot of good with that. Then we come through the second time about 3 weeks after bloom. And there's a stage that we call shatter in the peach orchard where the peaches actually get a little loose on the tree. So if you shake a branch like this, peaches will just fall off on the ground. And at that time, we give our guys rubber hoses. And we go through with rubber hoses, and we just hit the branches with rubber hoses and indiscriminately really just knock a percentage of the fruit off the tree. Then we come back a third time in June, and we go through by hand and actually go in and reduce clusters of fruit down so that they are not growing right next to each other like this, which would cause them to deform. We pull off and single out the fruit so it can be nice and round and have good shape and high quality. So it's a very labor-intensive, expensive way of producing a crop, but it also gives you the highest quality of fruit for the consumer.
How does it pollinate then? Is that a problem for you?
Pollination is really not a problem with peaches. Peaches are self-pollinating, so we don't really need the assistance of bees in our peach orchards or anything like that. Now, saying that, weather plays a big role in the success of your pollination. So when you have years like the year we've just had where it was cool and cloudy and wet, pollination is not quite as good as it is when it's warmer and sunny. So that sometimes works to your benefit though, because you don't need all of that stuff to pollinate anyway. It actually reduced our thinning bill in years when things are not as pollinated as other years.
How much maintenance do you need to do other than what you've already described on these? And I'm thinking especially fertilization, herbicides, pesticides.
Yeah, peaches are nitrogen hogs, so they like to have nitrogen every year. Now, it's not like corn and soybeans where we have a huge fertilizer bill every year. Perennial crops tend to be a little more lax on the fertilizer uptake than annual crops. But we put in nitrogen every year for these. We also have to be very aware of what's going on under the tree in terms of herbicide control, because that if we have grass and weed growing underneath the trees, that creates competition for water and also an alternate host for insects and things that might damage the crop. But the most expensive part of what we do is labor. And all of our perennial crops are very labor intense, so it requires hand pruning, hand thinning, hand harvesting. So we have a lot of people going through these orchards every year to make sure that the peach trees are shaped right, thinned right, and harvested right. The second biggest input cost that we have is our spray bill. We live in a wet, humid environment. It's great for high quality fruit. It's also great for high quality diseases and insects. They love the environment too. You just spend an evening outside in Illinois and you'll get bit up by all the mosquitoes, and there's a lot of other things that like biting fruit. So we have to be very careful about making sure that those pests are under control. So we spend a lot of time monitoring the orchards through scouting programs and insect trapping programs so that we can have counts of how many insects are out here, and you're not wasting sprays when you don't need to, so that you're reducing it as much as possible. You also want to isolate problems. You know, if it's a problem that's just isolated to one section of an orchard, there's really no reason to try to control a certain pest in the entire orchard. We just want to control it where it's a problem. So we've had a lot of success through integrated pest management in reducing the amount of chemicals that we put on, which is not only an environmental benefit, but it's also an economic benefit to us because it's very expensive and very time consuming.
What are the chemicals that you use for pesticides?
The list is long and distinguished, but you know, there's a lot of chemicals that that we use as fruit growers that you would not see in the row crop farms. And as time goes by, it gets more and more evolved, so the control is highly specific. So for an example, not necessarily in peaches, but in apples, there is one particular insect that has 5 different chemicals that work in 5 different ways at controlling one insect. And they work at different times in the life cycle, and they work at different times of the year. So you have to be very much in control of your application timing, the rates, and what the weather is doing at the time, and also knowing what the insect is doing at the time. Is it a larvae? Is it a pupa? Is it an adult? Is it flying? Is it crawling? What is that insect doing, and are we putting on the appropriate chemical to control at that time? The benefit of that is you have good control of the insect, and you're not doing harm to other things on the farm that are beneficial, because there are also insects that are beneficial to the production of your crop.
I'm curious, what was the one insect that's especially dangerous to apples?
Codling moth. Codling moth is a real pest to apples, and here in the state of Illinois, there was for tens of years, for a long time, there was an organophosphate chemical that was a broad spectrum insecticide that basically killed everything in sight. And here in Illinois, we were one of the first places to develop resistance to organophosphates in codling moth. And so for the last probably 10, 15 years, there's been a lot of aggressive research being done at the University of Illinois, and we've really got some new chemistry and some new techniques at controlling it very effectively.
What's the enemy of these trees we see here?
The enemy in peaches is primarily weather. Diseases and insects, while they are a problem, they're very manageable in terms of peach production. Weather is your biggest risk, especially in Illinois. Right now, these trees are forming the buds for next year's crop. And so those buds are on these trees all winter long.
Can you show us what one might look like?
Well,
put you on the spot here.
Let's see. Well, I'll pull a shit. So if you look in here, you'll see right in these areas, you'll see little black spots. Those are the buds forming for next year. And by the end of the summer, they're going to be completely formed, and they're going to be next year's peach crop. So these buds have to sit out here all winter long and endure pretty cold temperatures. If we dip below 0, we start to kill these buds. Peach trees are not a very hardy fruit tree. So there's a lot of years that we lose our entire crop as a result of freeze. And that's the risk of growing fruit this far north, but it's also part of the reward because you don't always have a lot of competition.
And that's what happened, how many years ago was it?
Well, we lost our entire crop last year, but that was a little bit different. There's other risks too, because last year what happened is we had a really warm March. And when it's warm early in the spring, well, the tree thinks it's ready to go. It's wanting to go to work and produce fruit. So those buds start to open up and flower. And actually by the 1st of April, we had little peaches hanging out on the trees. Then we had the Easter freeze of 2007, and that time it got down in the low 20s for 3 nights in a row, and we lost our entire peach crop and about 85% of our apple crop. Very rare event. The only other time it's happened in our company's history is 1955. That was the last time we lost both of our crops. So that's a rare event. When we talk about winter kill, when it dips below 0 in January, February, that's a more frequent event for peach problems. And we think about once every 10 years you're going to suffer a loss like that.
I noticed that there's an awful lot of spoilage, I guess is what you would call it, that's laying on the ground here. Can you tell us if that's a problem?
Typically, when you get into the commercial production like we're in here, where we have our own crews harvesting the fruit, it's not much of a problem. What you see, the guys who are harvesting the fruit are going to make some decisions if a peach is too small or if it's got some damage to it. they might just throw it on the ground. They may not have seen it when they picked it. You also are going to lose some when it storms. You know, if it gets a little windy and the branches start to rustle around, some fruit will fall off the tree. Overall, I would say that this is not a serious situation in this particular block of fruit. When we go to our orchards that we do pick your own fruit in, where we allow customers to come directly out to the farm and harvest the fruit themselves, you'll notice that there's a lot more spoilage on the ground in those situations. And that's okay. You know, that's part of the experience. The customer's going to pick a peach and decide, I don't like it, and throw it on the ground, or maybe they take one bite out of it and throw it on the ground, or maybe the kids are throwing them at each other, which they're not supposed to do, but they're going to do it. And but what you find is that the return for the farmer is so much better letting the customers come out and pick, that even with the spoilage you get on the ground, it's worth it to get the profit.
But I would think a lot of the fruit that's laying on the ground is perfectly fine. It's just got some kind of a blemish or imperfection, if you will, that it could be used for some application.
It can be. And once fruit hits the ground, though, you cannot harvest it. It is spoiled. You know, you worry about E. coli and things like that, and you know, we're out in the wilderness here, so there are wild animals, deer and fox and coyotes, and you might have some fecal material on the orchard floor. So anytime a piece of fruit hits the orchard floor, it's going to stay there.
Is that an industry standard, or is that by regulation or law?
It's an industry standard. It's not necessarily law. I do know, especially in the apple industry where they make a lot of juice and cider, they do not accept any apples off the orchard floor. A juice plant will not take any apples that have been harvested from the ground. So it's pretty recognized industry-wide that that's something that you don't want to get into.
Anything else you'd like to tell us about peaches, maintenance of the peaches, before we catch up and get a little bit of film footage with the crew that's picking them?
I'm good.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
All right.
Chris, tell us a little bit about what these pickers are looking for.
Well, they're going through here now. This is a pretty heavy picking in this particular variety. This is Starfire, and they're going through and just checking to make sure that the fruit's got full color, and then they selectively harvest the stuff that's fully mature. So you can see he's kind of taking his time and looking at the fruit, and also trying to go as fast as possible because they want to get through this as quickly as they can.
How are they paid then? By the hour or by the basket, or what?
They get paid by both. They get paid a regular hourly wage plus a 15-cent a tote harvest bonus. So these guys can harvest sometimes up to 200 totes a day.
A tote of these boxes?
Yep, these are harvest totes. And plus, with their regular wage, they can make a handsome pay.
Do they keep track of the exact number of totes that they've each got?
If you look up here by the wagon, you'll see one guy has got a yellow pad, and he's recording every guy as he brings in a full tote of peaches, and he's also checking the quality of the harvest. You know, he wants to make sure that the basket's full, that they're not picking too many green ones, that they're not putting branches inside the basket to fill it up. So it's just a matter of kind of keeping them accountable for the quality of their harvest, and also rewarding them for efficiency and filling their baskets.
Now, I noticed that we have an entirely male crew here. Is that typical?
Very typical. Sometimes we'll have female people working the trailers, but this is a very physically demanding job. That basket full is going to weigh about 40 pounds, and you're going up and down ladders a lot of times with that, and all day long. So it's pretty grueling work.
Okay.
You want to come up here?
What are the hours that they would typically work?
Well, it really is dictated by the trees. When the peaches are ready to harvest, we keep on harvesting until they're picked, and we'd start about 6 or 6:30 in the morning, as soon as we have enough light to see the fruit, and we go until we're done picking all the peaches for that day. So Right now we're kind of ahead of schedule, and we're getting done, 1 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But last week there was a lot of fruit ripening, and we were working 12 to 14 hours a day to stay ahead of the fruit. So it's really
There's no
dictated by
maximum limit at the amount that they can work in a particular day?
Well, I think there is a maximum limit, and the guys tell us, like, look, we're done. We need a break. And so, typically, though, these guys want to work as many hours as they can because this is seasonal work. So they want to put in all the hours and make as big a paycheck as they possibly can. So I'm always impressed with the output that they can generate.
How many on this particular work crew?
We have about 13 to 14 guys in each crew. We've got 2 harvest crews out every day, and these guys can pick about maximum about 3,500 totes in a day with 2 crews. So this trailer holds about 100. So about 35 loads of peaches a day is about our maximum.
Okay. I guess I wasn't paying close enough attention. You've got 2 crews working?
Yes.
And how long will they be here with you?
It depends. Our crews kind of increase and decrease in size. We are at our peak right now during peach harvest, and from about July 15th to September 1st, we're going to be in the neighborhood of about 30 gentlemen on our crew, and then we kind of scale back through apple season to about 20 guys, and then in the winter we're basically shut down until we start pruning in February. Then we're up to about 20 guys again. So it kind of ebbs and flows as the demand of the season changes.
But it's not strictly just for picking, it's for all these other high labor tasks that you were talking about before.
Yeah.
But I would assume that a lot of these guys move from harvest to harvest, from state to state, region to region.
It used to be that way, but it's really not anymore. As things have changed in the laws and how we can do H-2A visas and so forth, it's very regulated. And so these guys have come from Mexico, this particular crew, and they are designated to work for us for a specific length of time doing specific jobs. So they really don't have the freedom to go to another grower once we're finished. We actually transport these guys back to Mexico when the work is done. It used to be more of a transient population, and for hundreds of years, a lot of the hand labor that was done in agriculture was done by migrant types of workers that would start in the south. In the early spring, they'd start harvesting in Mississippi and Texas and come up through Arkansas and Illinois and end up in Michigan and then kind of work their way south again. It's not that way anymore. It's a totally different economy with the more regulated immigration policy we have. Plus, Americans really don't like to do this work. We've got pretty low unemployment. We're blessed in this country with low unemployment, and Americans want to work year-round. They don't want to do seasonal work, and they want to stay home. A lot of people have invested a lot of money in their homes and family, and they don't want to be transporting themselves all over the country as the seasons change. So it's left fruit growers, especially fruit and vegetable growers, in a kind of a predicament on how to get the work done.
Let's go ahead and follow this around as it pulls out here. Go ahead, Chris.
So fruit and vegetable growers have really had to adapt over the last, especially 20, 30 years, where I would say, in the 40s and the 50s, it was primarily Americans doing a lot of this work, and then between the 60s and the 80s, it really transitioned into immigrants doing this work. So now you see probably 99% of your fruits and vegetables in the United States are harvested by Mexicans. It's just the way the economy has worked, and the only way we've been able to get labor to do the jobs that we have to do.
Anything else you need to tell us while we're here then, Chris?
You tell me.
Well, let's move on to the next part of the operation then.
Okay.
Chris, we're obviously here at the beginning of your packing operation. Tell us what exactly we're looking at.
Okay, well, we bring the trailers in out of the field, as we saw out in the orchard, and as soon as they get in here, we hand dump the fruit onto a conveyor belt, and these peaches are going into a hydro cooler. We do things a little different. It's not uncommon to hydro cool fruit, but we're really just trying to take field heat out of the fruit. So we're going to spend 2 minutes in 33-degree water. And in those 2 minutes, we can chill the peach 20 degrees. So we're really trying to take a hot piece of fruit and get it to room temperature. And what that does is that kind of stops the ripening process, or at least slows it down extremely, and also gets the fruit into a stable situation. So it's going to handle with a lot more resilience when we go through our packing line.
How much do you have to be concerned about bruising when you're going through all of this processing?
It is a real problem, and historically, before we were doing this process, we would lose about a third of the peaches we would harvest because they would get bruised and damaged after they were harvested. Now we're getting that down to about 15%, which is still a lot of fruit that you end up throwing away. But there's also fruit that's harvested that, you know, probably didn't need to be harvested anyway, and we'll never get that to zero most likely, but it has been seriously reduced and had been very beneficial for us.
This water, is it totally immersed in this water, or is it just spraying on it?
No, it's kind of like a gentle rain, and it's just kind of trickling down on top of the fruit inside of there.
All the way through this tunnel?
Yep. Oh.
And you say that's a 2-minute operation?
Yeah, 2 minutes. Goes through here for 2 minutes.
Okay.
The cold water is recycled through a chilling tower inside and constantly reused.
Okay, let's go ahead and get a shot of the water that's coming out then, it looks like. Being cycled back in?
That's a return catch basin, and it pumps it back into the chilling tower and then cycles it back through the hydro cooler.
Okay, looks like we're ready to move to the actual packing operation then. And Chris, I assume what we're looking at here is just coming out of that cooling operation, dumps onto the conveyor belt.
This elevated conveyor takes it inside of the packing house where we sort and size the fruit.
Chris, now we're looking at the receiving end here. Tell us what we've got.
Well, inside of this machine is where we wash the fruit, and we're just trying to give it a gentle wash with some soft brushes to remove any excess fuzz. Once it comes out of there, it goes on to this roller table, and they're sorting out any bad fruit that they might find. And that fruit might have a blemish on it or be overripe or damaged from transportation, and they can drop it into these drops, and it goes into a number 2 belt, and it'll either go into a number 2 box that might go for making jam or jelly, or ultimately into a bin that goes out for making wine. So all of the products going in here goes to a winery for peach wine.
You were talking about washing. I would assume you're also washing to get rid of any lingering pesticides?
That's really not a concern. Pesticides really degrade in the sunlight and the atmosphere. We're more concerned about fuzz because it is very unattractive. If it's too fuzzy, it balls up in the handling of the fruit. And also any type of dirt that might get on the fruit, whether it's from a bird or from the environment.
So you're telling me that the consumer does not have to be concerned about pesticides?
I think we need to be concerned about eliminating anything that is not necessary, but our government does a great job of regulating that type of pest control, and all of the chemicals that are used in any agricultural operation are really designed to degrade in the sunlight and the environment so that there's really no harm whatsoever to humans.
Okay, well, let's follow along the operation then if we could. Chris, what do we have now?
So the fruit comes off of the sorting table, and then it gets singulated into 2 rows. the peaches go into these cups as they go down the conveyor belt, and as they pass across here, there's a scale. Right in this area, they're being weighed. Each piece of fruit is weighed, and then the computer interprets by weight what size that peach is and knows where to drop it on the sorting line. After it gets weighed, it goes past a sticker machine to get stickered and labeled with a PLU number and also with country of origin labeling, which is now a requirement for all produce being grown in the United States. As it goes down the conveyor, you can see it drops off at different spots along the line. Each of those drops are a different size of fruit, and the people packing that fruit at that station put it into a different box accordingly.
Now I notice in this case, in the field we had all men. In this case, it's primarily the ladies who are working the line.
Yeah, we find that women are a little more particular when it comes to packing fruit, so we end up getting a higher quality pack out from the women than from the men. But it's also, we do get applicants, both male and female, and we find that this is physically a more suitable job for women than for men, whereas the picking is really physically limiting for women.
Chris, what kind of hours would these ladies be working?
Here too, just like the field, it's dictated by the trees. As the peaches are ripe, we're going to pick them. As the peaches are picked, we're going to harvest, or we're going to pack them. So we follow the same schedule as the harvest crew. We start about an hour later packing fruit, and we finish about an hour later. So if the crew quits picking at 3 o'clock, we're going to stop packing at 4 o'clock. We pack all of the peaches the same day they're harvested.
How often do they get a break, and how long is the break?
Well, we get a break every couple hours for 15-minute breaks, and then a half-hour lunch, and then, you know, they tell us, we need a break. We're all right, let's take a break. So, but here too, these guys are very resilient. They work hard, and they're great folks. We have a very fortunate team here.
Additional packing?
Here, there's no piece rates in the warehouse because it's not as easy to determine a piece that they would be paid upon. So this is simply an hourly wage in here.
Now here's a really peculiar question. Is there a certain status that it's better to pack the big peaches than the small peaches?
Big peaches are easier to pack than small peaches. Here we're moving the women around all over the place. So they might be packing small peaches 1 minute and big peaches the next. The machine is very flexible, so while there's small peaches dropping off here, there's also very large peaches dropping off here. And it allows us to change it. So within a minute, this could be dropping middle-sized peaches. So we can change where peaches go in a moment's notice.
Who's controlling all of that?
Jerry is up here at the helm right now. He's really the packing house manager, but he's got a couple good lead folks. Maria and Hube are both leads in the packing house as well.
So you said this is Jerry, and he's the one who's managing the computer side of the operation?
He is at the moment, but we also have 2 other people that are very capable on this as well. He's responsible for the overall efficiency of the packing house.
Okay. He is a migrant himself?
No. Jerry's full-time year-round employee of ours, manager. He also manages our greenhouse.
Which means it's a requirement for some of you people to speak Spanish, I would think.
Yeah, we all speak a little. It's definitely helpful in the management of the business.
Okay, what else do we need to see here, Chris?
Oh, well, we can... once the boxes are full, you can see that they're put forward on this conveyor and taken down to the end of the packing line. This one's not quite full yet. And we'll go down there and see what they do with them.
Okay. Chris, what is the market these are destined for?
The wholesale boxes, which are the wood grain boxes, those are going to grocery stores. You can't let these do this. you gotta hold them back. This is printing a lot number on them. If it hits this, it won't print it.
I'm surprised by the variety of different boxes that I see crossing the line here. Is that different quality of peaches and different sizes of peaches you're trying to track?
Okay. I'm sorry?
No, I was asking about the different variety of boxes that I see coming across the line.
Yeah, this is Chief's Produce. This is what we consider a number 2 box right here. You having trouble? She's having trouble keeping up. Hold on a second. Hey, Jerry? Jerry? She can't keep up down here with these boxes, doing the boxes and the bags. So we're not getting, you know, a bunch of these aren't being labeled.
Okay, we were talking about the different sizes of the boxes and the labeling process here. If you could talk us through that, please.
Yeah, there's different boxes based on whether they're going out wholesale or whether we're selling them retail in our own retail store. So the large boxes that have the wood grain finish on them are going wholesale. That's our wholesale package. The boxes that you see labeled in white, these are pecks and half peck containers, those are going to our country store for our own retail use. And they do not get labeled down here. They're going to be sold out directly in retail.
And I think I know the answer, but why are we seeing them all intermixed like we do?
Well, the peaches come in randomly sized, and our customers buy them randomly out of the retail department. So what ends up happening is we process the fruit as it's needed for our store and our retail business. We pack everything that they pick, and so whatever's not needed for retail ends up going into wholesale. And there's a lot of different sizes associated with that, sizes of peaches. So smaller peaches are in a different package, larger peaches are in a different package.
Now I just noticed this device you were having some difficulty with earlier is labeling these boxes as they come through?
Right. We label each box with the variety name and then a lot that we can identify which block of fruit it came from, what time of the day it was packed, and in case that we have any trouble, we can trace back that package to any type of problem on our end.
Okay, very good. So it really is all computerized now. This is where technology has made a big difference?
This is where we've been able to enjoy some more mechanization. You can still see it's a pretty labor-intense operation, but we are trying to mechanize as it becomes available. I'm sure you'll see great leaps forward in this as the years progress. But, it's also, mechanization comes at a capital expense, so we have to invest a lot of money in new equipment all the time to keep up with those changing mechanical devices. Go ahead.
Chris, I got one more question for you, and that is, I noticed that all the ladies seem to have a pencil stuck in their hair someplace. What's the pencil for?
Well, two reasons we have a pencil. First one is we identify what package they're packing by a mark. So it's identified on the box what size of fruit it is and where it's going to go in terms of our customer. The second thing is they initial every box that they pack so that we can create an element of accountability. If we have a problem, we have quality checks in place so that we can go back and talk to a particular person and say, hey, you know, you need to do a better job on this, or you're doing a good job on this. But it helps with the level of accountability in the packing house.
Okay, and one final question then for you. the peaches kind of set the pace, and it's unforgiving. You can't fight the pace that you're dealing with. Is that a challenge for the workers?
It is a challenge because there's a lot of peaches that like to ripen at one time, and so you end up getting tired for a few days, and then it'll loosen up. There won't be so many fruits coming in, and then suddenly people are saying, hey, we want more hours. So it's you have to ebb and flow and be flexible and manage your team based on what the crop is dictating, and it creates some unique challenges for us.
Well, thank you, Chris, for a close-up and an inside view of your packing operation. It's been fascinating, and I know we've got more things to see in the farm, and we'll look forward to that.
I think we ought to look at how we chill the peaches down completely, too, in the cold storage.
Chris, you were right, it is cold.
Yeah, we really work very diligently to manage the temperature of the fruit. Peaches are kind of unique in that there's something that we call the kill zone in peaches, and it's between the temperatures of 55 and 36 degrees. A lot of people have had an experience where they go to the grocery store and they have a beautiful peach, looks wonderful, they take it home, take a bite out of it, and it's mealy and dry and flavorless. That's a result of internal breakdown. And there's been a lot of great research done over the past few years on what is really causing that. And it's because of storage between the temperatures of 36 and 55 degrees. So you saw when we bring the fruit out of the cold store, or out of the orchard, we're going to hydrocool that fruit down to about 75 degrees. And then we're going to pack it. And then fruit for our country store goes directly over there. It's never chilled completely. But the fruit that goes out in our wholesale market is still not chilled. It's still around that 70, 75 degree range. We bring it into this room, which this room is about 33 degrees. But you can see the pallets are large cubes, and if we don't really work at it, we're never going to cool the center of that pallet of fruit down. So when we bring them out of the packing house, we bring them in here and we put them on these very large fans, and you can see an example of it right over here to my right. These large fans, and we stage these up in a tunnel, and you can see there's a cavity down the middle of these pallets right here. And what's happening is that fan is actually sucking air through the middle of these pallets, forcing the cold air from the room through the small holes that are designed on the outside of the boxes. So we're forcing the cold air from the outside of the room through the boxes, and we can cool these pallets of peaches down from 75 degrees down to about 35 degrees in 6 hours.
What's your target in terms of how long it's here before it actually gets shipped out to your wholesale market?
Well, you know, in an ideal world, you would pick it, pack it, and ship it the same day. Peaches, as you can see, don't always do the ideal thing, so you have to, again, work with the flow of fruit. Now, in your cooler is the only kind of governing mechanism you have for your peaches. Last week, in this past few days, we've been picking very heavily, and so we build up a small inventory of fruit in our cold storage, and now for the next few days to a week, we're going to slow down on our picking. So now we will work out of our inventory over the next week. Typically, we don't want to have peaches more than 5 to 7 days. You have about 1 week to work through inventory. After that, the quality really starts to deteriorate, and you have to go look for secondary markets for your fruit. So it's really, to manage the quality, you would need to move your inventory out within 7 days.
How far is this fruit going to be shipped?
We market most of our fruit in the Missouri-Illinois region. So Chicago is a big market for us. St. Louis is our biggest market. But we go as far away as Minnesota and Iowa. But again, most of it's really pretty much within a couple hundred miles.
And I noticed that you don't have just peaches in here. I saw some banana peppers, some watermelons, and cantaloupe behind you.
Yeah, we utilize this room for storage of more than just peaches because we're getting in large quantities of cantaloupes for our retail market, so we'll store those in here. They come from other local growers. But we also grow banana peppers, green bell peppers, tomatoes. Those are all things that we produce ourselves, and we will use this same space to store them.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else we need to know about the cold storage side of the operation?
I think we're good.
Thank you very much, Chris.
You guys want to go see Pick Your Own now? Okay.
She wanted to move. I don't know. They were down by the cemetery. I don't know where they're at. Can't get a hold of them.
Don't stand up so close to the fan. Let's go up this way.
Chris, while we're here in your garden center, let's talk a little bit about, I know we're going to talk about the Pick Your Own operation, but talk about some of the other products that you market here as well.
Sure. We have a full line specialty food store, and a lot of the things that we market are Eckert branded products, not necessarily things that we produce ourselves, but products that we've partnered with other local growers and other local producers because we feel the product is exceptional quality and we'd like to put our name on it. So we've got a lot of complementary products here for peaches, like the peach cake mix and muffin mix. Of course, honey is a big product for us, being in the apple business. And also a lot of Amish products are really good for us. But the apple butter down here you see is a really good product for us. We sell a lot of that. And so it's complementary products to things you think about when you're on a farm and buying apples or buying peaches and want to pick up and take home with you.
The peach crisp mix, the peach cobbler mix, somebody locally is putting that together for you?
There's different suppliers all over, but some of our suppliers are in Georgia, some of the suppliers are in Ohio, some in Illinois. It just depends on where we feel the best quality comes from.
Okay. What do we have over here in the jars then? Is that some more of your products, or? Well,
the corn salsa is from an Amish organization, and it's really great product. We do a great job on selling that, and you can see there's a peach salsa even that does really well for us in summer for obvious reasons. Our honey comes from a beekeeper here in Illinois, and we're very proud of that product. All of our jams and jellies come from a company in Georgia, actually, and we found that they have the highest quality flavor-wise, so we want to keep our name on that product for sure.
Why did you decide to get into this aspect of the business as well?
The Pick Your Own business?
Well, all of these different products that you're featuring.
Well, we started retailing in 1910, and at that time it was really an effort to market the products we grew directly to the consumer so we could get a higher margin for the fruits and vegetables from the farm. And over time that evolved and expanded and even into a full-line grocery store. We were an IGA store for 40 years right here in Belleville. We got out of the grocery store business just because of all the changes that occurred in the industry over the 70s and 80s, and specialized more in produce, bakery, and high-end specialty grocery, and have now expanded into meats and delis and imported cheeses and wine from all over the world. So we're really trying to be more of a specialty food store and cater to people who have more gourmet taste and really want the freshest, highest quality food that you can get.
And where are you finding the market for that? People coming in quite a ways to come here?
We see the market's really local, and as a farmer on the edge of a metropolitan area, urban sprawl is something that is your friend and your enemy. It makes it more challenging to do farm operations, but it also brings a lot of new people. And with rooftops come new shoppers, more traffic, and more competition. So because there's an opportunity with more customers, and because we're being pushed by our competitors that move in, there's more shopping options for our customers in the area, we have to up the ante of our game and provide different products, more unique products, high quality products, great service, if we want to stay in business on this farm. You know, if we don't change, we're afraid we're going to become another mom and pop statistic like you read about. So we're trying to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to us and have fun at the same time.
What do you see as your competition then? Are
Well,
there other pick-your-own operations that are close to here?
The pick-your-own business is a unique operation that we do. There's not a lot of competition in that directly, but there's a lot of indirect competition for families looking to spend time with their children on weekends. And so our competition is really other entertainment venues. The ballpark, going to see the Cardinals play, going to the zoo, going to Six Flags. Those are all competitors in that market. And we have to do a really good job to compete. Entertainment's a tough business. And people spend a lot of money to get people to come into their facility in the entertainment industry. So every year you have to do something new and better and improve your operation if you're going to stay relevant in that business.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris.
Well, I thought the wagon would be here by now, but we really don't enter our stuff in any competitions. But the Illinois specialty growers sell our peaches at their booth
Well, the
at the
expo's
state
not
fair.
a competition, it's just a showcase.
Oh,
They have free tastings every day, samplings. And
no, we've never done that.
As good as my homemade salsa?
Hard to say. I've never had yours. We do a homemade salsa here too. That's not our homemade salsa, but we have a lot of Hispanic influence on our staff, so they make a pretty darn good salsa. I like using homegrown tomatoes.
He doesn't?
Because there's too much moisture. You know, there's too much water in them.
I ended up draining a lot of that off before I mix it all together.
Yeah. He likes the shipped-in tomatoes that are a little drier. So, well, heck. Nice picking, Laura.
Well, we were up in the west rows of John Boy's, but they're gone. We're going to go up here to the Jim Dandy on the grass road now.
Okay.
And where we're going tomorrow is anyone's guess.
You'll find them. He's going to turn around right here, guys. You might want to back up a little bit.
Chris, I see we got the wagon pulling up here for the pick-your-own side of the operation.
Yeah, this is a big part of the experience when you come out to pick, is riding on a wagon. Most of our customers are coming from the St. Louis metropolitan area. Most of them have never been on a farm before, and most of them have never taken a wagon ride before, something I know I take for granted because I grew up on tractors. So this is kind of like our roller coaster. Is you get on the wagon and you do a little hayride out to the field, and it gives you a chance to enjoy time with your family and with your kids. This is really geared towards the whole family coming out and having fun on the farm.
And they each get their own box and fill the box up, and that's part of the overall price, I would assume.
Yeah, you get a box when you come out to pick, and you take it out to the field. We sell our peaches by the pound, so we weigh the peaches when they come back in. Of course, you know, we always tell everyone we're willing to buy everyone a free lunch because you can eat all the fruit you want to while you're out there.
This is a Thursday, and it still seems to be a pretty good crowd for you.
Yeah, pick your own peaches. It's a fun thing. It's not as popular as pick your own apples, simply because the weather's not as conducive in the summer as in the fall. But nonetheless, it's still a very popular business for us.
What's it like on the weekends?
We'll have upwards of 5,000 people here a day on the weekends to go pick apples and peaches.
Would you expect that many this weekend?
This weekend's going to be a little slower, mainly because it's going to be hot this weekend. So that's going to slow down traffic a little bit, but it'll be a good weekend for us.
And it looks like it's the whole family. Grandparents bring their grandkids out, the whole thing?
Yeah, this is a multi-generational business, and our mission of our business is to create family memories. And this is a wonderful opportunity to create some really great memories with your kids and have a good time on the farm.
I imagine they bring their cameras along as well.
Yeah, we're very fortunate that we're in a lot of Christmas cards. You know, the picture of the family in front of the tree or in front of the pumpkin or with a box of fruit. So we love that part of the business.
I know you have Christmas tree stands out here as well. Do the people come out here in the summertime scoping out the tree they want a few months later?
I don't know how many people are actually scoping out their trees, but that is another part of our business. While it's not as popular as peach and apple season, we do grow Christmas trees, and you come out and we give you a saw and you cut it down yourself, and we bring it in here and bale it for you and take it home and set it up.
Okay, well, let's go out to the fields and watch a little bit of that.
Okay. Whoops.
Chris, one of the comments you made earlier really stuck with me. You mentioned that you mentioned the word entertainment, and I wasn't expecting to hear that.
Yeah. Well, you know, we're really in the entertainment business. We're not in the business of selling fruit as much as creating memories for families, because I don't think people come here because they can get a bargain on fruit. I think people come here because they want to have a really neat experience with their kids and spend a day on a farm and show them something that a lot of people don't see anymore, an actual working farm and how fruit is harvested. And it's not actually coming from a factory in town. It comes from a tree, and there's a process that these trees go through every year in order to produce a nice crop of fruit. And it's also, you know, a connection to the history of the land and where things came from, and it's an educational process for our family as well. So we love that portion of our business and love seeing the families come out and take pictures by the tree or with a basket full of fruit and send that out in a Christmas card or whatever, put that on their websites and post it on their blogs. It's really heartwarming to see that we can be a part of that.
How long have you been doing the pick your own side of the operation?
We started Pick Your Own Apples in 1965. So we've been doing it over 40 years now. We were one of the first farms in the United States to start doing Pick Your Own, and it is a big part of our business today. And in fact, today, Eckert's is the largest Pick Your Own fruit operation in North America.
Doing it that long, I would imagine you see people coming back who remember when they were little kids and are bringing now their kids.
Absolutely. We see a lot of that. We see a lot of multi-generation families that had their history with their parents, and now they're bringing their kids out to do the same thing. And that makes a lot of it worthwhile to be a part of that story.
Well, so far we've been spending a lot of time on peaches. Let's look at some other aspects of your operation.
Okay.
Chris, we've got a beautiful view here. Tell us what we're looking at.
Well, we're kind of on the top of the farm here and kind of looking out over the landscape and seeing several of the crops that we produce here on our farm.
Why don't you start up on your left, if you would.
Okay, up on the top of the hill, you can see we have a small vineyard up there. It's a little experimental vineyard that I put in a few years ago, and we're growing some wine grapes up there. Then coming in front of that, you can see a planting of squash and gourds for our fall decoration and for fall sales. Then if you pan on around, you can see in the distance the subdivisions that are starting to encroach upon the farm. And as we were talking about, there's both pros and cons associated with the influx of population around the farm. Then directly behind me here is one of our apple orchards. And these apples that we are growing over here are all for Pick Your Own. We don't wholesale any of our apple crop. So we bring people up in the wagons from the stand down below, and they come out here and harvest the crop. It's a big part of our business. That's the busiest time of year for us. Then off in the distance behind the apples, you can see some of our Christmas trees that we grow. And we have a Cut Your Own Christmas tree farm. And behind the Christmas trees, you can see a peach orchard, just a small little sliver of the peach orchard. And that's a Pick Your Own peach orchard in the distance there as well. So lots of diversity in crops and so forth. And we also have other growing areas where we have tomatoes and peppers and strawberries and blackberries.
And we do want to get a shot of that just a little bit later as well. If we can swing over to the left, I see an old building through the apple trees.
Yeah, as I said, this farm has been in my family since the 1870s. It was my great-great-grandfather, Henry Clay Eckert, who married Mary Miller. This was a Miller farm originally, and her father gave the farm to her. Well, we better get out of the road.
Maybe we could talk later about going to get subtracted too by inheritance.
There's always the risk.
Okay, Chris, as we said before, it's a working operation, so we just saw an example of that. But you're looking at this farmhouse that you were telling us about?
Yeah, in the 1870s, Henry Clay Eckert, my great-great-grandfather, married Mary Miller. And this farm was a Miller farm, and he and his wife were given the property by her parents, and they continued the farming operation from there. The brick home over there was built in 1880 by Henry and his wife, and they lived in it their entire life and raised their family there. And then his son, Alvin Eckert, also lived in that home and raised his family in that house. So it's been 2 generations of family members that were raised in that brick home.
And we're going to hear a lot more about the family history in a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the variety of apple we got here.
Well, there's several varieties of apples. Unlike peach trees that are self-pollinating, apple trees need to be cross-pollinated. So we like to plant blocks of apple trees in alternating varieties. So we are looking right here at some Fuji apples, and they're alternating with some Jonathan and some Honeycrisp apples. So there's 3 different varieties planted in this block. And then we bring in bees that assist us in pollination, because the bees scurry around from flower to flower looking for nectar, and in the process of harvesting their nectar, they get their hairy legs pollinized by the pollen on the flowers, and they take that from one tree to the next, and just by luck they are pollinating the apples as they go foraging for nectar.
But it's not a problem that they're taking pollen from one variety to another variety of tree?
They have to. Apples have to be cross-pollinated, meaning that if you had an entire field of Golden Delicious apples, you would not generate any apples, because you need to have pollen from a different variety of apple or crab apple in order to make a viable fruit. So we have to take pollen from Golden Delicious to Red Delicious or Jonathan and mix it up so you have a productive orchard.
Chris, notice also on these apple trees here, just like the peaches, they tend to be on the small side. At least it looks like that to me. Is that deliberate?
Yes, with apple trees, we have moved more towards a higher density style of production, and what that really translates into is dwarf style trees. Apple trees are a little different than peach trees in that you can control the overall size of the tree by putting it on a different root stock. So the root system of these apple trees are totally different than the top half of the tree. Whereas the top half of the tree might be a Golden Delicious or a Fuji or a Honeycrisp apple, the rootstocks are completely independent of that, and what they do in the nursery is they fuse the top half with a rootstock, and the rootstock is really what's responsible for controlling the overall height of the tree, and the top section is what's responsible for controlling the variety of apple it produces. So you put those 2 together and you come up with a planting system that has more trees that are smaller, and we like smaller trees because it's better in the pick-your-own business to get access to fruit when it's closer to the ground. It's also a more productive style of apple production than the old standard style apple trees that were 40 feet tall, and you had to use ladders to harvest, and they were hard to control disease and insects in.
And we also saw, you were talking about the development earlier on that seems to be encroaching, and you said there are pluses and minuses to that. I'd like to have you elaborate on that if you could.
Well, the obvious plus to many farmers is that you have inflated land values, which is good and allows you to do other things that maybe you wouldn't be able to do. But it also creates a lot of burdens because not a lot of people who build houses in the country like to have the equipment and the noise and the dust and the dirt that goes along with agriculture. They like the ambiance of agriculture and the serenity of living in the countryside, but they don't want all of the other stuff that comes along with that to get a production farm in existence. So, you know, we're striking a balance between living with a lot of neighbors and also being able to produce our crops. And I think the long term is that, as most farmers find in the edge of the urban areas, that you're going to end up having to move somewhere down the road just because it doesn't make economic sense to continue to farm property that is so valuable, and you have more opportunities if you were to sell this piece of property and develop 3 times as many acres for your farming operation somewhere else. So that's kind of the sad part of agriculture. Although we are really working as hard as we can to delay that process and take advantage of having more people close by. We can generate more dollars from our pick your own business and our retail business, which allows us to stay in this farm longer and longer. But at the same time, we know that probably long term we're going to be farming in other spots.
Does it change the nature of experience for your pick-your-own customers when they come out here?
Oh, we hear that occasionally. You know, that, oh, we're not in the country anymore. There's so much traffic. There's houses everywhere. But it's pretty easy to escape it on this big of a piece of property, too. And having hills, and especially in an orchard, when you get inside the orchard a couple rows, you don't hear those sounds, and you know, all of that disappears. So I think it for the most part is not a problem for us.
20 years from now, standing in the same place, what do you think we might find?
I think you'll find houses, unfortunately. But we've really devised, we're working now to devise plans on what are the priorities of the farming operation and what property is going to go first, second, third, fourth, so that we can continue for as long as possible to farm this property and still make good economic decisions.
Okay, I think we got one more location we want to set up on, and that would be overlook some of the vegetables and other crops that you've got.
Okay.
Chris, we've relocated once again, and we're pretty close back to your home base of operation, but obviously looking at what to me looks like plain old-fashioned corn.
Well, it kind of looks that way, but this in fact is Indian corn, and we grow our own Indian corn that we use primarily for fall decoration and retailing to our customers that come for pumpkin pick your own, and they take it home and put it on their homes to decorate the house for Halloween.
And that's strictly marketed in your stores here?
Yeah, we don't wholesale any of these crops. These are all for our own retail use.
Is this harvested the same way that any field of corn would be?
Absolutely not. This is all hand harvested. We come through and shuck the ears off, and then you peel the husk back and tie it. It's all done by hand because you want to preserve all of the kernels on the cob and all of the husk on the cob as well.
Okay, let's go ahead and swing around, and as we swing around, we'll see several of the other plants that you have here on the farm.
Yeah, in the background you can see a field of green. That is actually a pumpkin patch that's planted into plastic beds that were also our strawberry crop earlier this year. So we get 2 crops off of the same field in 1 year.
Is that the one that we see just short of the road?
Yeah, it's just behind the tomatoes. And
Okay, so it's in front of that plowed area.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And that will be harvested this fall for our retail use up at the country store. And then on this side of the pumpkin patch, you can see our vegetable patch. And most of this is tomatoes. These tomatoes, we have about somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 to 6,000 tomato plants. These tomatoes are sold exclusively through our country store. And we have tomatoes available from about 4th of July all the way up until the frost. Then next to the tomatoes, you can see we've got some peppers. We grow banana peppers, both sweet and hot, and green bell peppers here, and those are also used for our own retail here at the country store.
My experiences with peppers, especially with hot peppers versus regular bell peppers, you don't want to get them too close. Is that not a problem?
Because they'll get the other one hot?
Yeah.
Well, honestly, we're kind of new in this, so we probably could learn a little from you. But we typically don't grow much hot peppers just because our customer base is not really seeking hot peppers, they're seeking mild peppers. So most of what you see out here is just strictly mild.
And all of what we're looking at here is picked by
hand. These are all hand harvested crops, and our crew comes out here about once every 2 or 3 days and harvests the patch.
But it's not pick your own.
Not pick your own, no.
Any reasoning why this wouldn't be a pick your own experience?
Primarily because there's not enough demand to make it worthwhile. We've got more demand for peaches and apples, and we do pick your own blackberries. But the tomatoes and peppers are not enough demand for a pick your own crop there.
And we're obviously too late for the strawberries, but I'm guessing the strawberries is a pick your own operation as well.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we have a lot of pick your own strawberries.
Okay. Anything else that we need to be aware of here? I see the irrigation system that you've got.
Yeah, you can see that there's plastic beds, and we call this plasticulture type of production. So there's a raised bed of dirt, and then that bed is covered with plastic mulch, is what they call it, but it's just black plastic. So you can't get any rainwater into the plant, and as a result, they're very much dependent on irrigation. So you can see there's a header pipe, and under each row of black plastic, there's a little trickle pipe that goes along there to water the plants. And it also delivers the fertilizer to the plants. The plastic is very helpful for a couple reasons. One is it warms the soil early in the year so you can get your plants started earlier. The second thing, and most importantly, is it's weed control. So we really don't have to use any herbicides on this field whatsoever. And those of you who've grown tomatoes and peppers in the past, and strawberries especially, know what a challenge it is to keep weeds out of that type of a plant because they're right next to the ground and the weeds get mixed in. You cannot get them out very easily.
So the trade-off is your own irrigation, but the plus side is you can regulate the amount of fertilizer it gets then.
Yes, and the other trade-off is it's a lot more expensive. So you have to save it in labor and production. So you make a big investment up front, but thus far it's really proven to be worth the investment.
How long have you been doing the vegetable side of the operation?
We've been doing tomatoes for about 5 or 6 years. Peppers, on the other hand, this is really our first venture into peppers.
So it's all pretty new though.
Yeah, relative to growing apples for 150 years, this is new.
And strawberries, how long have you been doing those?
We've been growing strawberries for a long time, probably 50 or 60 years.
And blackberries?
Blackberries, we've been growing blackberries for about 20 years.
Okay, so it seems that over the years you're adding new things. What's on the horizon for that?
Well, wine grapes, you saw up there.
Making your own wine?
No, there's no plans for a winery at this point in time, but we all really enjoy wine, so it's kind of a personal passion of ours.
And I heard you mention that you take some of the peaches and that gets turned into wine as well.
Yeah, we've partnered with a local winery in Missouri, Montel Winery, and they're a great group of folks that really do a good job on wine. They approached us about 10 years ago about starting a peach wine, and so now we take all of our peaches over to them, and they make a really nice peach wine that is widely distributed in Missouri and Illinois.
Well, Chris, you've got a very impressive operation. It seems like it's been growing over the years incredibly. It's diversified over the years. You're finding new markets as you go down the road and finding new ways to, I guess, overcome the challenges that every farmer has to face anymore. So thank you very much for the experience. It really has been fun for us.
Thank you so much.